The dust is settling on UFC Freedom 250, and what it has left behind is one of the most complicated post-fight landscapes the sport has seen in years. Justin Gaethje is the undisputed lightweight champion of the world and walking away with $825,000 in bonuses, fight of the night and performance of the night simultaneously. Ilia Topuria is in a hospital with what Dana White suspects is a broken orbital bone, having suffered the first loss of his professional career via corner stoppage after 4 rounds. Cyril Gane is the interim heavyweight champion again with a controversy attached to the finish that is not going away quietly. And the UFC is broke, Dana White's words, not a dramatic interpretation, from staging the most expensive event in the company's history. Let's go through all of it. Start with Justin Gaethje, because his status as champion requires the full context of how it happened to be properly understood. Dana White confirmed the bonus structure immediately after the event. $825,000 total for Gaethje, combining fight of the night and performance of the night. That is the financial stamp on a performance that delivered exactly what Gaethje promised when he said he expected a 25-minute war, except it did not go 25 minutes. It went 4 rounds, and at the end of 4 rounds, Topuria's corner looked at their fighter and made the call that he could not continue. The eye, which Dana White said probably involves a broken orbital bone based on visual evidence alone, was one factor. The accumulated damage across 4 rounds against a man who refuses to slow down regardless of what is happening to his own body was the larger factor. Gaethje's post-fight reading of what happened is the most analytically useful thing he said all night. He acknowledged that Topuria rocked him. He acknowledged that Topuria's body shots were crazy and that his liver still hurt. He said Topuria was very fast and genuinely dangerous. And then he identified what he believed was the psychological turning point. When Topuria did not get the finish at the end of the 2nd round, Gaethje felt something shift in his opponent. The spirit went out of him. The man who had publicly guaranteed a first-round knockout, who had told the world there would never be a 2nd or 3rd round, found himself in a 3rd round, then a 4th round, without having delivered on the promise. And Gaethje had predicted this exact scenario in the pre-fight media. When we go to round 2, you are going to be like, what the? When we go to round 3, you are going to be like, what the? He said it. It happened. The psychological debt of the prediction came due. His separate comment about the blood is the one that will generate the most debate. He said Topuria was so concerned about bleeding that immediately after Gaethje landed the uppercut that opened him up, Topuria kept touching the cut, kept checking it, and that this preoccupation with the blood was part of what changed the dynamic of the fight. Whether that reading is accurate or whether it is Gaethje constructing a narrative that flatters the outcome is impossible to verify from outside the cage. What is verifiable is that the corner made the decision, and that Topuria spent the night in the hospital. Gaethje's statement that he does not believe Topuria deserves an immediate rematch, specifically the phrase that he made him quit and quitters do not get rematches, is going to be the most discussed quote from the post-fight period. The tone is uncharacteristically harsh from a man who typically expresses genuine respect for his opponents, and it reflects something real about the personal dimension of this fight. The divorce comments, the lost respect, the escalating tension of fight week, Gaethje is not in a gracious winner mode. He is in a champion who proved his point mode. Whether that translates into an actual denial of a rematch depends on factors neither man controls. Primarily what the UFC decides is commercially optimal. Speaking of not being in a gracious mode, Conor McGregor reacted to Topuria's loss by posting that he quit himself, adding that it was sad to see and that he earned a nice stripe however tainted. He followed that by pivoting immediately to his own upcoming fight and describing the prospect of Holloway getting knocked out as a glorious time to be in the McGregor fight business. This is McGregor operating at his natural frequency. The moment Topuria, who had been one of the people who dismissed him, showed vulnerability, McGregor arrived with receipts. He also defended Topuria against Terence Crawford, who had taken shots after the loss, posting multiple tweets about boxers being afraid of MMA fights and calling Crawford pitiful for taking shots at a man who just lost an MMA fight. The dual operation, poking Topuria with one hand and defending him with the other, is pure McGregor. Islam Makhachev's reaction was the most pointed from anyone in the sport. He wrote that he who exalts himself will be humbled and that there are levels to this game, then followed up with a line that has already become the most shared quote from the post-fight fallout. To quit in the biggest fight of your career is something not everybody can do. That sentence is constructed with surgical precision. It is technically a statement about rarity rather than an insult, but the implication could not be clearer. Islam has been waiting for his shot at Topuria, has positioned himself as the natural next challenge, and now he is watching the man he was supposed to fight get stopped in a corner on the White House lawn while the challenger who stopped him is celebrating. The timing of his call-out post suggests he understood immediately that the landscape had changed and that he needed to establish his position in the new one. Paddy Pimblett's reaction was the least surprising possible version of what Paddy Pimblett would do when Topuria lost. He posted that the only thing Topuria had to do was beat a 38-year-old coming off a 5-round war with him, called him a little pretender, called him Chiso, noted that he himself went 5 rounds like a real fighter, and called for a Gaethje rematch. This is either a self-aware comedic performance or a genuine belief system. With Pimblett, it is always both simultaneously. He is already angling for the biggest available fight, which is the only rational thing a fighter in his position can do the morning after a card like this one. Merab Dvalishvili's reaction was the most human. He wrote that he was proud of his warrior brother Ilya and that he knows he will come back stronger than ever. This is the Ilya that the public does not see, the man behind the king persona who has genuine relationships in the sport and who is now processing the first loss of his career in a hospital room. Ilya's brother Alexander posted on Instagram something equally direct: proud of everything you do and have done, in victory or in learning. The framing of the loss as learning rather than failure is the frame that every fighter in this position needs from the people closest to them. Khamzat Chimaev also offered support, which carries specific weight given that Chimaev lost his own undefeated record just weeks earlier to Sean Strickland. He wrote that those who rejoice at the defeats of others will never see greatness in the sport. A man who has just experienced the most public and unexpected defeat of his career, extending genuine solidarity to another man going through the same thing, is one of the more quietly meaningful moments in a week full of very loud ones. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social the morning after, calling the event incredible, noting that the weather that everyone had been panicking about turned out to be perfect, and listing every fighter who performed: Bo Nickel, Gaethje, Gane, O'Malley, Hokit, Ruffy, and Lopez, as unbelievable. He said most people have never seen anything like that kind of human speed and power before. He said the White House has never looked more beautiful. He congratulated Dana White and the UFC. Whatever the political dimensions of the event's existence, the review from the man whose lawn hosted it could not have been more enthusiastic. Dana White confirmed what the $60 million production budget had suggested was likely: this is not happening again. He said directly that the UFC cannot afford to host another one of these events, putting it in the same category as the Sphere, extraordinary one-time statement productions that exceed what the commercial return can justify repeating. He did, however, reveal that conversations with Trump about a fight for the troops next year are already underway, with White specifically asking for a year to recover financially before committing to another major non-standard production. The White House was a one-time statement. The troops event would be a different kind of statement with a different cost structure. The Daniel Cormier and Eric Trump situation resolved in the direction that the post-event hacking narrative pointed toward. DC confirmed in an on-camera interview leaving the venue that he had been hacked, that the post showing alleged DM screenshots from Eric Trump asking about rigged fights was not posted by him. Eric Trump responded with a simple thank you to DC for clarifying. The community notes on the original post, which had said the post he was claiming was fake was actually real and that he deleted it, add a layer of ambiguity that the simple hacking explanation does not fully resolve. What is certain is that DC says it was not him, Eric Trump says it was not a real conversation, and the screenshot that showed Trump apparently asking about the integrity of the fights is now officially characterized as fabricated. Josh Hokit's post-fight call-out of Michelle Obama from inside the White House Octagon has produced the most significant disciplinary question heading out of the event. Dana White was asked about it by Time magazine and responded that while he understands the Obamas are public figures, he is completely against saying nasty and false things about people's families, and that he hates that kind of nonsense. That is a meaningfully different response than the typical Dana shrug. Hokit, who is 10-0 and 4-0 in the UFC and who just delivered a career-defining performance at the biggest event in company history, is now in a position where the next conversation with his employer involves the comment he made from inside the cage. Whether that produces a fine, a suspension, or just a private conversation depends on how seriously the UFC takes the optics of that specific moment on that specific lawn. The Cyril Gane cheating controversy is the most unresolved storyline coming out of the event, and it deserves honest engagement. Multiple members of the community, including Ariel Helwani, who is not given to hyperbole, raised the question of whether the hammer fists and elbows that preceded the TKO included illegal strikes to the back of Pereira's head. The MMA guru counted what he described as 16 back-of-the-head strikes. Fan analysis on social media produced counts ranging from 10 to 16 illegal shots. Josh Hokett, watching live backstage, said in real time that Gaethje was hitting Pereira in the back of the head and added that it looked like illegal elbows were landing. Herb Dean was the referee. The stoppage ended the sequence before a point deduction or warning was issued. Whether the finish was legitimate or whether the accumulated illegal strikes played a significant role in Pereira's inability to defend himself in the final moments of the fight is a question that the replay footage is being studied to answer. What is clear is that Gaethje's history, the eye poke against Aspinall that ended that fight, the pattern that multiple observers have noted across multiple contests, has created a credibility problem for his performances that does not disappear with a title win. Gaethje's own post-fight statement about the performance was straightforward. They prepared well, they did the job, and the strategy of applying pressure and not being in pressure worked against a fighter like Pereira. He called out Aspinall immediately and specified Paris in September. Dana White said he would try to make it happen, acknowledged that the Gaethje versus Aspinall fight in Paris would be big, and noted that the French fanbase is great for live events. The fight is as close to officially announced as an unannounced fight can be. Pereira's path forward is genuinely uncertain for the first time in his UFC career. His statement that he is unsure whether he will remain at heavyweight and needs to discuss with his team before making any decisions is not the posture of a man who has a plan. It is the posture of a man who needs to process what happened before he can articulate what comes next. The weight issue that Hokett raised, 251 pounds, potentially too heavy for a fighter whose athletic identity is built on being one of the fastest and most explosive men in the room, will be part of those discussions. Whether he goes back to light heavyweight, where his natural attributes are maximized, or stays at heavyweight and makes adjustments for a rematch with Gaethje, is the central question of his next chapter. Here is where the sport goes from here. Gaethje as lightweight champion creates a specific set of opportunities and storylines. Tsarukyan is next in line and has been for longer than anyone has been comfortable acknowledging. The McGregor wildcard, assuming he wins against Holloway, creates a commercial scenario that the UFC cannot ignore. Islam Makhachev is the pound-for-pound number one and the fight that would define both men's legacies most completely. Gaethje, at 38 years old, having just delivered the performance of his career, is now the man that everyone needs to go through. He mentioned a conversation with his mom about potentially retiring, which is either genuine consideration of the door after the greatest possible exit or emotional statement from a man who has not yet fully processed what he just achieved. The smart money says he fights at least once more. The smart money on Gaethje has not always been right. UFC Freedom 250 is over. The White House lawn will be restored to its original condition at the UFC's expense. The claw will come down. The billion viewers will go back to their regular lives. And the sport that just produced the most watched event in its history will spend the next weeks sorting out what the results actually mean for every division they touched. The answers are coming. None of them will be simple.